My name is Mary Jane Penny. I am a proud citizen of the United States of America. Let me start this presentation saying that even though the official threat was made to me on November 15, 2011, the gang stalking activities that blocked and destroyed my life and some of my dreams began early in the 2000s. I was able to find that out because some of the practices he used to hurt me earlier in the decade were practices that he repeated after November 15, 2011. The threat was, I'm going to destroy your life and destroy your property. I called the police. They wrote a report, and I know that he tried many times to get that report fade away at the police station. It's been a while, and I don't know what happened with it, but initially he couldn't get away with it. If you think about it, I need to say the following. It's been like 15, 16 years of my life in which I have experienced episodes that I never even thought of or knew of. And in my head, all these thoughts are trying to come through at the same time, and it's very difficult to keep a straight line because the memories simply are mixed together. One of the first things that he did to me was to cut my sleep in half. I used to be able to sleep soundly 8-9 hours, went to bed early. I'm not a night person. From that, I went down to 4 hours a day. And that was a big toll on my health. A friend of mine, Lynette, I'm not going to give her last name, and I decided to look for another career in the nursing field as an anesthesiologist. There was a possibility of doing the course in Hollywood, Florida, but we had to take some courses, and I enrolled at FAU. To start with the courses, from the moment I enrolled until the day I had to quit, every time I reached the university campus, the headache started. No medication could take away the pain. I fought to stay in class many times. Sometimes I couldn't even get out of the car. Sometimes I had difficulty driving back home. When I finally quit, he turned Saturdays and Sundays the days of hell for me, because the headaches took place those 2 days In that way, I did not have the time to prepare for the chores of the following week. I know that he hates Peruvian people, and I know that he hates women. Women that are successful, bright, intelligent, energetic, happy, that have a very good financial standing and can, carry on with a very interesting, successful, fulfilled life. There was a bunch of ladies like that in the building where I lived, which is Opal Towers West Condominium Association on 1150 Hillsborough Mile, Hillsborough Beach, Florida, 33062. He killed them one by one. And when I say he killed them, I don't mean he went in there with a gun and shot them, I'm sorry. I meant he used those weapons that he has access to through the use of a cell phone. For instance, you can be hit with air at the speed of a bullet and you can be thrown on the floor. I know that for a fact because that has happened to me. And because some of these ladies died because they had a fall. He took advantage of their social life activities to plan ahead the deaths or accidents of these ladies. One, her name was Joan, Unit 808, hit her head when she fell. She had been drinking. They like to drink. Tell me who in America doesn't drink? Most people are social drinkers. Some are more than others, but America, everybody likes to drink. I'm not a drinker, but if I am in a social gathering and I like the wine or the scotch that they are serving, I'll have a glass, or maybe two. And in order to find out when his bullets killed or caused accidents, he sent his friend Larry Muna, Munna. He lived in Unit 204. He and his wife were in very bad shape. They were obese people. He did that with Joan. He did that with Florence Ornstein. Florence lived at Unit 1010. With the fall, she broke her hip and she was on a wheelchair. She was a dead living. I saw her once, and what I saw captured my mind, and I have the picture to this date in my head. A little after the accident, she was in bed. She turned over. The nurse had something to do, and she was dead. There was another lady that was part of the group. She didn't die of a fall. He induced cancer on her. And I can talk now about cancer without any difficulty, with plenty of assurance that he has the power, the FBI has the power to give cancer to people. Her cancer was quick and she died. You might say, but how do you know that they can do that in short periods of time? Well, I'll reply by saying my personal experience. And forgive me if I am repetitive, because even if you try to prepare a summary of the important points, sometimes you have to go back to some stories. to get back to additional or required information. On September 27, 2021, I was at the hairdresser, and she tells me, Mary Jane, you have a, what's the name for it? Well, when somebody kisses you and leaves you have a bruise on your behind your knee. Can't remember the word. And I said, what? I looked at my knee and I couldn't see anything. So I had to pull my skin towards to, the front. And I saw what looked like an electrocardiogram, but it was not a straight line. It was a circle, a closed electrocardiogram. I immediately knew. In my mind, I remembered that the official threat was November 15, 2011, and he wanted me dead by that date, 10 years later. And those 10 years were going to be by November 15, 2021. I knew it. I felt it in my heart, in my gut. I knew it. I do not like to brag about myself, but I'm a very observing person, and I have been told that I'm a genial person. I have taken intelligence tests with results over the roof. So I decided to find out what was going on. What had been surprising me in the last few days was the fact that there were strange people below me and above me, right below and right above me. They spoke no German, no French, no English, no Spanish. It was another language. I continued to watch. I tried to go on the elevators as much as I could. And I finally saw these characters that I thought were from a circus. And I'm not kidding. I thought they were from a circus or a third-class cabaret show. He wore a V-cut shirt with a sweatsuit pant with white and red strass, like a showman. And the woman who claimed to be his wife, she had the appearance of a gypsy. She said she was from Venezuela. He said he was from Croatia. And they both looked very out of place. When I asked him what was he doing in Lima and how long was he going to stay, he gave me a smirk and said that his job was going to be done. He said, in 2 months. In 2 months, I'll be gone. In other words, in 2 months, his job would be accomplished, which meant November. Since I knew who was down there, even though they were not the only ones, the voices, I kept note. I kept checking on voices on elevators and hallways. And I finally found out there was another Croatian on that apartment. a bodybuilder, a gay man that would bring a woman and a kid to give the impression of a family when in reality he wasn't. I can tell you, it would be 10 o'clock at night. He would go out with male friends, and she and the little baby would go in the opposite direction at 10, 11 o'clock at night by themselves in a strange country. Then the question came to, who are the men on top of me? It turned out they were from Venezuela. I don't know if in the United States this chain of delivery people or delivery companies are known there. The company I'm talking about is Rappi, Rappi. And, well, the people above me were two Venezuelan males, two male Venezuelans, one woman, and a little baby. Don't remember the names, but I think there were Raul, Jose, Luis the baby, and Luisa the woman. People from very low standing, socially, culturally, economically, the way they yelled at each other without, you are in an apartment, you can walk from one room to the other. You don't have to throw, the doors when you want to close the doors. It was a spectacle on itself. You should have seen their looks. Dirty shoes, dirty socks, dirty everything. Because these people don't have a home to live. While they were attacking me, or I should say, while they are, even though I don't sleep there, I've been spending my nights in hotels since almost then. They were staying there. They were the aggressors for the night. The aggressors for the night. At the beginning, I was very confused because even though the aggressions never stopped and I still slept with the light on, as I do now, I think I was able to turn it off for 1 week and then I had to turn it on once again. I didn't know what to think. When I arrived in Peru in 2011, for reasons, 2012, early April, May, I had to come, I was sort of pushed to come to Peru. I thought things were going to change for me, for the better, because I was leaving the country. To my surprise, the trip to the airport was a nightmare with the attacks. I'll talk about weapons later. When I finally got to the airport and I got a wheelchair, the lady says to me, you cannot take water with you on the plane, but I had also made some Tupperware with ice. And I was going to throw away the ice too. And she said, no. You take the ice with you. And I said, what's the purpose if I cannot take? No. Take the ice with you. When I was on the plane and we were ready or close to departure and the attacks continued, and I was thinking, when are we going to get out of here? I feel from the back a shot. You can call them a shot, a hit. I could feel the hit in the back. I turned back and that stupid man grinned at me as if it were funny. I took note of his face, and when we took off and we were allowed to turn on electronic devices, I started walking towards him. And to my surprise, there were at least 12 FBI agents among men and women whose phones said FBI in green. I will never forget. FBI. To the man that had hit me, I said, I know who you are and I know what you're up to. My trip was no pleasure. I used the airplane ice first. Airplanes don't have freezers. They carry bags of ice, but eventually they run out of ice. So I had to use my own. Before landing, before the flying attendant says, sit and use your seatbelt, they went to the bathroom one by one. The bathroom was almost across from me, and each one of them attacked me ferociously. My head was burning. My face was red. But don't think of red the way you can turn red when you get I don't know, shocked about something, or it's too hot, or you're going, no, it's different color red. And it's not even throughout your face. You have spots red that spread around your face, but unevenly, and it's the shade of a tomato. When we finally landed, what was left on my eyes was a little piece with a thickness of less than one of a dime. So I barely made it. The flight attendant came to me and said, ma'am, I suggest you go to the doctor because you don't look well. I knew what was happening. I had a chauffeur waiting for me outside. And I said to myself, I was very ingenious in that respect. You know, it's over. It's over. On the way home, the attacks continued. So I told the chauffeur, the driver, to stop at a food mart and bought ice, a few bags of ice, because I know my mother was not fond of ice. And I said to myself, maybe they don't have the ice machine going. I'm going to need ice right away. I arrived at my house. My mother had been operated of labia cancer, which is, the outer part of your vagina. She was type 1. And she had Alzheimer's. And her Alzheimer's was, I don't remember the stage number, but I can tell you that she could not remember the name of his kids all the time. She had to give up her key to get out of the house. She could not talk to anybody on the phone because she made no sense. She couldn't make phone calls. She could be very aggressive. It was difficult, and she didn't want to eat. She didn't want to take showers. She didn't want or didn't allow anybody to cure her area. So I see my mother, I lie down with her. But then I would say almost immediately noticed that something was terribly wrong. Something was not right. On purpose, I got up in the middle of the night, and that house of ours was huge. So I looked around the entire perimeter, and I saw lights in some apartments. And I knew. She had a French stalker. She had Chilean stalkers. She had a Spaniard stalker. His name is Ramon, and he lived on Cantuaria 350. His gay companion it was a Serrano. We call an Indian here a Serrano from Ayacucho. His name was Fabricio. They were almost attached to the back of the garden of the house. And they built a ramp from their home to the roof of the house where the area of my mother was. And I stayed with her some nights, and I could hear the noises. And I could hear noises like from x-rays. Since I knew that I had to protect myself, I was protecting myself with everything I could think of. I had all my compresses that were frozen. I used them frozen. I had all the tins and of the house, all the lids of the pots of the house all over me. It took me time to get ready. And then what they would do is they would force you to go to the bathroom to pee. And let me say the following. When they push you, when they force you because they hit there, you can actually tell when where they're hitting. And if you know a little anatomy, you realize what they're doing. They make you pee. You don't pee the way you pee when you go to the bathroom normally. It is like a sprinkler. It shots in different directions. It shoots in different directions. So you had to take everything apart, pee, and come back again and reset yourself, and you never do it the second time equal or better than the first time because you're tired. I didn't think much of it. But one night, my mother said, "I am so cold." And she had, I don't know how many blankets over her. So, I just took care of myself. My brother was supposed to take care of my mother, but he really couldn't deal with her. He didn't know what he was doing. When she had her first surgery, type 1 surgery, I checked. Some doctors suggest surgery, but at age 80, 81, surgery. A few months later, he tells us that the cancer had come back and she needed to have another surgery in that area. That sounded very suspicious to me, and I said I want to see the tests. When I saw the tests, I couldn't find the word cancer on any of them, and I said, "No, you're not going to." So there was no second surgery. But my mother was failing and fading away, little by little. My brother didn't really pay closer attention to her. He didn't help her with the nourishing needs. He was more interested in looking for antiquities in markets, going for coffee to some coffee shops in downtown Miraflores. And, she was just dying in front of me. Unfortunately, I was not in charge of her insurance plan. I was not in charge of her because there is another story I won't get into now. But I decided that I was not going to be helping the household anymore because of things that I was told by somebody whom I trusted that was working in the house, who this brother of mine fired. I'm not going to continue with this. He decided to kidnap her and took her to a hotel, motel, I don't know, and my neighbor saw them and called me. She's an attorney from the International Bank of Development. And she said to me, I know where your mother is. I walked there, but I didn't go in. A day later, he comes back with her. She was with her eyes closed, and there were tears rolling down her eyes. My sister-in-law, I think it was, called the doctor or somebody that they had contacted in the past. And the lady doctor came, saw her. And she gave my mother a day or two. The reason why he came back to the house is because she was choking on her blood. She was puking blood because the cancer that they gave her metastasized to her lungs. The nurse that came the first night said, I'm not going to stay anymore. It's too pitiful. It's too frustrating. So she had to be taken to a clinic. The first doctor said she had a day or two. I have a vivid picture of her wounds on her area, and she smelled rotten. That's probably why the doctor told us a day or two. She lived around 2 or 3 weeks more until she couldn't keep up with the required oxygen level to survive, and she passed away. Why do I tell the story? Because they can give you cancer in a matter of months and develop a metastases in a matter of months. The favorite of Martín Ruiz de Gamboa is to hit the vagina, the anus, the labia, the uterus, the ovaries, everything that has to do with the female apparatus. He has done that to me since day one. I said to you before that I was threatened on November 15, 2011. In less than a month, I was a line away from being dead. When I say a line, it's because this is what happened to me. I was at work, and I had not had time to eat, and I felt funny in the afternoon. So I decided to go down for a walk. It was a nice area for a walk. So I noticed that it didn't make a difference. What I forgot to mention is that when I got on the elevator, I had to run out because The electricity from the light on the elevator and the top of my head could not be together. It burned like hell. So when I went down on the stairways, and I went up on the stairways, I went directly to the bathroom and I wet my face and I wet my hair, my head. Went back in the office, lied on the sofa, and called the receptionist and told her to, call 911. The paramedic told me that I was close to a VTAC, which meant very close to a possible death. They took me to the hospital in Boca Raton, to emergency, of course, which was very close. And the doctor said, let's run the blood tests. They did all the tests, and when he was ready, he came back into the room, puzzled, very puzzled. And he said to me, these are tests from two different people, because the blood said that I was in very good shape. I have always been a very athletic person who led a very healthy life. I never smoked, never did drugs. I never got drunk in my life. And I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. Because I was able to find out early, since that threat, for something that he did to me and my dog one night. I entered in Google a couple of words, and this gang stalking thing came up, and I started reading, and bingo. I knew it was Martín Ruiz Gamboa, who lived at 1150 Hillsborough Mile 2, Unit 301. I had called a friend. She came to the hospital and stayed with me. And the doctor said, I don't know what to do. And I said, don't worry, I'll just go home. I went home. She followed me. I get a phone call, and I drive into the guest parking area. And she goes in further. Soon after comes this VW car with very dark, very black tinted glasses, I should say, the windshield, the windows. And the co-pilot window gets rolled down, and there he was, Martín Ruiz Gamboa, with a pair of sunglasses at 8 o'clock at night that were the size of half his head, ugly, totally black too. He took the glasses off his face. He grabbed with his mouth one of the arms and chewed on it and looked at me as saying, do you see who I am? Or do you see what I can do? He closed the window and went immediately down to his parking garage in the basement. My garage was also in the basement, but because of the threat, the police had asked me not to park in the lower garage, and a friend allowed me to use her parking on the street, practically on the street. That was the first attack. The point of mentioning this attack now is to tell you they can replicate, but they cannot reproduce. If they were able to reproduce a disease in its entirety, then we would be dealing with God. And they cannot. It hasn't been the only time that I've been hospitalized. I'll mention those cases later, but every time that I had a situation that required attention immediately, there was always a contradiction between what was seen and what the result showed, or the symptoms did not match a specific disease, or there were symptoms of one disease and symptoms of another, or simply they decided to call it a syndrome. I would like to go back to my mother. She died a few months after I had arrived, not too long. And I was with a friend that I have known since I was a little girl. We used to go to the gym together, run at 5 in the morning every day, 6 miles or more. And we were across the street from a very well-known ice cream company. And she looked at my legs and she said, "Take a look at your knees. They're taking you through the same path as your mother's." I remember how I was dressed. I remember everything. Because at that moment, all those pieces that did not make any sense to me, that I couldn't fit into the puzzle that I was trying to make in my head, finally fit in. Martín Ruiz de Gamboa did not want me to come back to Peru because he did not want me to know that he was killing my mother. Martín Ruiz de Gamboa had all those agents on the plane with the purpose to provoke me a heart attack and die before landing. I have a question to ask. When I made the arrangements to fly, because I didn't want to go back, and I was like now, staying in hotels, I made my decision to come only with 2 days, 2-day notice. So I called the airline 2 days before my departure date. When I arrived in Lima, all these stalkers had to have been there longer than 2 days. You cannot rent a place in 2 days. Not here. This Ramon and Fabricio purchased the unit where they lived when they were stalking my mother. You don't do that in 2 days. It's not like here. It's a longer process. So I realized that he had been hurting my mother for a while, for at least a few months. And I told you about those air shots that, these stalkers use to hit people with the purpose of making them fall, especially the older. Well, he did that to my mother constantly. My house was huge. I could be in one building and hear her fall once, sometimes twice on a day. She never broke a bone, but I know it was him because they did that to me too. Going up the staircase, and a couple of times I was not concentrated, I was distracted. I had to hold the handrail. So, can you imagine for a woman with her condition, like my mother, her age and her cancer, having to be able to stay strong under continuous attacks of this kind? I would like to say and repeat it over and over again, my mother never met him. He never met my mother. Never, ever saw my mother. She had a green card, but she did not like living in the States. And she left when my father died, which was early in the 1990s. Okay? Later, earlier in the 19, it was earlier in 1991. My mother passed in 2013. He started her attack, in my opinion, sometime in 2011, before he threatened to take my life and my property away from me or destroy my life and my property. This friend of mine that mentioned that to me and helped me fit the rest of the pieces of the puzzle had seen a documentary on television very late at night one day, and she was so impressed that she remembered almost the whole thing. Furthermore, when Chavez died and he said on TV that he had been told that the CIA had the ability to give cancer, she said to me, why don't you write to the Venezuelan consulate a letter and explain everything that has been happening? She and I started to work on a draft. I would go to her house and we would go review, and I would go back to mine and make the necessary changes until it was finished and I left it at the embassy. As I said earlier, whenever I was in town and when we were young, we went out together at 5:30 in the morning for our run. She would go out in the balcony and see if there was something strange or somebody weird outside. And this day, there was a car in running. She described the car as totally black. Windshields, windows, car color, everything was black. And she had a bad feeling. So what she did was to call her brother. Her brother has a very poor impulse control. He grabbed a baseball bat and without thinking it twice, he ran down the stairs, opened the door, and went towards the car, which ran out of there as quickly as possible. My friend calls me and says to me, Mary Jane, and tells me this story. And she says, I'm afraid, I'm sorry, I don't want to see you anymore. So that ended a relationship that had lasted for a very, very long time. But she was scared for her life and that of her family. I knew the attackers. There were some that stayed at this Ramon and Fabricio's house for days. There was a woman with her kid, and the woman and the kid were part of the conversation. And I would be out looking at them, and they would be looking at me as if they were talking about me. And that was when I didn't know what they were doing to my mother. The attackers were from Chile, from France, from Spain, from Peru. Those were the attackers then. And they were attacking my mother. And then they started attacking me too. It was hell for me. It was very bad for my mother. But I kept fighting. I just kept fighting and fighting. And I think with this guy, this Martín Ruiz de Gamboa, the problem is that he lacks, as a psychologist, I'm going to talk now, he lacks the ability to confront face to face any woman successful, intelligent, with means. He can't take it. He can't take it. I'm going to give you an example. Right after I noticed he was going into my apartment because he was a board member who actually gave the key to the laundry machines to the security or the maintenance guy who was a known criminal, had been in jail, and had recently gotten out of the hospital because he was stabbed with a knife. Why did he do that? So that this maintenance guy would do favors that he requested from him. This Martín Ruiz de Gamboa entered my apartment anytime it pleased him. He had control of the electricity, so he had control of the cameras, the elevators, the electricity in the apartment. So he could go in and out anytime he wanted. And what they do is they try to drive you crazy. What I had read first was that they don't take anything from you. Well, that's not the case. Martín Ruiz de Gamboa took a leather case of a pocket-sized day timer calendar. I got tired of calling the police, but let me go back to my point. I put a paper on the door where I said what I had to say about him. Do you think he could rip it apart? Do you think he could rip it apart or take it off the door? I'm going to have to demonstrate this to you. This is the paper. This is how much he was able to rip. He can't do it. That's why he hurts women and he hates women. And I think deep inside, he wishes he had a vagina, he had breasts, he had labia, he had ovaries, he had a uterus. He has a wife who I heard is a nurse. And he has 3 kids. I know at least 2 were into drugs because he wanted his kids to be in the drug smuggling business. Martín lived in 301. One of the kids, Matias, was one, and Thomas was the other one. And there was a younger girl, Andrea, lived sometimes on and off with him. The girl was. But the kids, at least one of the boys, at least one, have been in jail, as far as I knew then, 3 times. And the daughter too. And she even became pregnant without even being married. He made friends with somebody that purchased a unit on my floor, which was unit 715, the largest unit on the intracoastal side, that was overdone. Everything was cherry wood. His son was also in jail for drug dealing in countries like Thailand. They were buddies. Martín would take him to the airport, pick him up from the airport, do parties at his home. For this guy, they seemed to be buddies. I don't know if he was trying to get into that business or what, but I can tell you for sure. Martín Ruiz de Gamboa and his stalkers were protecting the drug dealers from the Palm Beach County. How do I know? Because they tried to attack me while I was practicing with my gun. I can describe and I can recognize the faces of the people that tried to circle me. Maybe to scare me. I don't know. but were definitely gangsters, just like on TV. The leather from top to bottom with the fringes on the jacket, the long hair cut in half, not nicely cut, hair all over the face, the silver-like jewelry, the black car with the, tinted windows and tinted everything. The door of the driver closed and the door of the passenger behind open, but nobody there, like trying to create mystery or fear. When that happened to me, I called one of the security persons and they accompanied me to the car when I was ready to drive back home. And it was a long drive, like 45 minutes on the expressway. But I had to train myself on using a gun, which is something I don't really like. There are so many thoughts coming through my head. I don't know what to say first. After my mother passed, since I had been out of the country for several months, I realized that, I was going to have to deal with some other things, family things in Peru. I was better off selling the apartment, putting my things in storage, and, doing something else later on. So that's what I did. I sold the apartment and I put my things in storage. I come back and then another attack starts. This time it was on my feet. That's another part of your body that they like to attack, your feet. Because if you don't have your feet, you have no locomotion. You cannot walk. You cannot use a cane because the pain is unbearable on the bottom of your foot as well. And this Ramon and Fabricio, I know you learn to distinguish where the shots come from. Turn the top and the bottom of my foot into an omelette of little eggs, fried eggs all over, blistered all over my feet, both. I was alone in the house. I woke on my knees. I had to go up the staircase on my knees. Soon my knees just started to hurt. And even though I had been going to the doctor and the doctor was giving me medication, the medication was not helping. And these guys kept attacking me. I slept on the staircase close to the first floor. I called a cousin of mine and she took me different places, but none of the first places we went to, like 4 or 5, were willing to accept me. We ended up in a hospital. There were no beds. There were like 10 people waiting for a bed. The first bed that became available was given to me. And I was there for 13 days with endovenous antibiotics 24 hours a day. Slowly but for sure, everything started to disappear. I could exert pressure on my feet. All those weird marks on the top and bottom started to fade away, but I had to have special treatment after that in order to go back to, as much as possible, to the original condition of my skin. I don't need to tell you that that took a long time. It did not happen right away. That was the second biggest attack. After that attack, my brother came back to the house, and I went back to another property. And they started doing things at me. I was alone again at that other property, but things that I have never heard of and seen happen to me again. For instance, you have seen a cushion. A cushion usually has 4 buttons in the center. Or you have the sewing machine go, horizontally and vertically, and then you have sections. Well, excuse me just 1 second. You see, they know I'm talking, even though I have a mask on so that they cannot read my lips, because I know they see me. They've pushed me to go to the bathroom every 5 minutes. And on purpose, they make sure I start peeing before I get to the bathroom. An attack that happened to me once and didn't happen again was the most weird thing that I'm going to describe. It felt like somebody had a needle and went up, and then they went down to they divided my front from, I would say, my last rib to below to the beginning of my thigh, to below the groin, okay? And that was divided in 4 sections. And they started with what felt like a thread. You could feel that going up, going down, until they met, or they built all these sections that were 4. I did not know what they were trying to do. I was at church. That happened one Saturday. I go to church on Sunday, and all of a sudden, I start feeling the most weird sensation I could describe. It was as if my abdominal area, all that area, those 4 sections, were building up heat. It was like somebody was turning up the stove, and all my abdominal area was the stove. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if to run. I didn't know what to do. I stayed in church. But I don't need to tell you. The following day, I had blisters in that area, in different parts of that area. And they made sure to hit you with electricity, the blisters that were the worst, that hurt the most. For that to repair took months. The doctor, they didn't know what to say. They couldn't understand my story, but that is what happened. Little by little, I recovered. I kept using everything I could think of, and I recovered, only to fall into another disease. I was lying down, and for 10 minutes, or something that felt like 10 minutes, it may have been only 5, I don't know. They started shooting inside my right ear. I didn't know what to do. When they were through, I was shaking. I left, and from a public phone, I called my dressmaker and said to him, I want to go out of the state. Help me out. The following day, I looked at my parts, and they were raw. They were raw. I was cautious, I was careful, I cured, I protected, I was able to overcome it. But that was the beginning of a new story, because he started to hit my labia, my clitoris, into my vagina, my anus, on top around my belly, up and down, non-stop. I may have mentioned before I had purchased from CVS where I thought they had the best cold compresses. I used them, or I used ice in order to run away from these attacks, but they didn't stop. And all of a sudden, from the middle of my thigh all the way up to above my belly, turned into a purple red. Spots here, spots there. My brother was very concerned, and he said, let's go to the hospital. We went to the clinic, to my mother's gynecologist, and when she saw me, she was so much in shock that she pulled back and said, oh my God, I have never seen anything like this before. Oh my God, why didn't you come early? What happened? She had me take tests for AIDS, for cancer, for herpes. You think of any test, and she asked me to take the tests. I went for all the tests. They were negative. This doctor from a prestigious clinic said to me, I don't know how to help you, and sent me to a dermatologist. I go to the dermatologist, and the dermatologist looked at me, but she was in better control of herself, examined me. She sat down, asked me some questions. She sat down, wrote a prescription for 4 days, and she said, I want to see you in 4 days. And I said, what do you think I have? And she started with the word syndrome. The moment I heard the word syndrome, I knew I was facing a situation of replicate and reproduce. In 4 days, I was a little better, but the treatment lasted for months. And I had to take and I had to do so many different things. It was painful. It was very painful. Finally, I recovered. That was around 2017. all these attacks lasted time, so I've been under attack for a long time. Then we finally sell the main house, and we moved to a hotel for a year because my brother was looking for something, and I was looking for something different, and they still attacked me, but I didn't know that they were getting ready for the biggest attack of all, which happened in September of 2021. I have some real pictures on paper that can show you how they operate and where are they located. I wish I could have a cameraman and I would show them. Across the street from the building I'm at on the 10th floor, there is only a one-story shopping center. Then there is nothing until the end of that street. And across from it, there is a 5-star hotel. Well, they attacked from the 5-star hotel. From across from that hotel, there are 3 buildings. Those 3 buildings. The main one is on the corner of Calle Cantuarias and La Paz, the 3rd block. They have satellite communication. They have pulled a wire from their office to a tree of 4G and 5G antennas on the roof. You cannot see them. You cannot see them. It's like they have no windows. When the attacks at high magnitude started, I would wake up and feel and say to myself, it feels like I have been roasted, I have been toasted. I discovered how they work. And I know what their tools are. And I know when to worry and when not to worry. He's been trying to murder me for a long time. And now he's on the run. But I don't think the FBI knows everything, all the murders, all the frauds he has committed, including the death of a resident in the building, Herb Sliffer, who he had killed for an insurance policy for $3 million. Before I finish this first section of my presentation, I'm going to tell you how did he display his people in the building. On 202, he had a chemist, the poison man, 202. On 301, it was Martín Ruiz de Gamboa. On 402, he had a Bonnie and Clyde, if you know what I mean. On the 5th floor, on 501, I think he was his boss and partner, Raymond Bird. How do I know all this? Because the daughter and brother of the deceased told us what had happened to his father, how they were threatened not to say anything, how his father was forced to purchase the policy with money from the association. He was not going to know the name of the policy or the name of the beneficiary, and they were going to give him $300,000 for the favor. He was never paid. And the first day that policy was effective, he was found dead in the most awkward and questionable position most of the building found. Because a man that is almost 6'5" or 6'6" cannot fit in a balcony that is less than a yard in depth. How can you sit a man? No. And he had a big bruise on the back of his neck. The opinion of the people that dared to make an opinion or give an opinion was that he and his friend, Herb and his friend, from across the water, across the street on the other side of the water, used to get together on Saturday to have a pizza. And the story is that the pizza arrived, but it was intercepted by at least 2 people that work for Martín and took the pizza to Herb, and Herb never got out of there again. They claimed that it took them 2 days, more than 2 days, to find him. Let me tell you, I was president of the board of that building. I knew the building inside out. If I had we had 3 sets of stairways. If I had put a person on each side on each staircase, we could have gone through the entire building in 10 minutes. Okay, push it, 15 minutes. 2 days and they couldn't find the body? Where was Martín? Nowhere to be found. Remember the day that I was attacked and I ended up at the hospital with what seemed to be a VTAC? That same day, he tried to poison me. He had poisoned the food that I had brought, with me for lunch. But I opened my apple, the container that had the apple, and I smelled something funny. I just had a little bit, and I said no. When I got to the building, there was an ambulance. And that ambulance was taking a lady under the name of Alina. She lived on 1006. And she was yelling, my food was poisoned, my food was poisoned, somebody's trying to kill me, they poisoned my food. She was in the hospital for an entire week. Her husband had to fly from Chicago and be with her. I don't need to tell you, when the results came out, do you think that it showed that she had been poisoned? They were not conclusive. That lady knew that there was something funny going on with the money of the association. So whenever she came to Florida, Martín made sure she had awful headaches, like he gave me when I was trying to go to FAU. She could put up with that for 1 or 2 days, and then she had to go back to Chicago. She couldn't take it. She went back to Chicago. She had the headache another day or 2, and then it would not come back until she came back to Florida again. That's how he did. He hurt anybody in any situation, anytime he wanted. One day he didn't like what Alina had to tell him, and Martín Ruiz de Gamboa had the maintenance guy take the dumpster and throw the garbage onto her brand new car. Of course, there were no cameras, there was no evidence, and of course he was never to be found because he's a coward. He's a coward. He's a sociopath, a psychopath, any pathological person you can think of. How could a man turn his kid into drugs to turn them into drug lords? Who could do that? I will continue on a second section, and I will make sure to tell you all the different things that they do. But let me just finish this chapter saying the weapons are very inexpensive. They are air, electricity, but not the electricity that you get from an outlet. Air, electricity, and electromagnetic frequencies like the microwave, which they use to heat you up or heat up the room you walk in. So you look at yourself in the mirror and you're totally red. I'll explain later. Let me just say that I had very important videos and pictures, but since they have access to my cell phone, to my computer, to my WhatsApp, to everything, they have edited my videos, they have cut short my videos, they have deleted my videos, they do what they want to do. Okay? And you might say, well, didn't you have a chance to send that information to somebody? I did send information to other people. But when I tried to reach those people, and I finally did, they went to check again and see if, the videos or the pictures were complete or were there. And the same that had happened to me had happened to them. So can you imagine what it is to be under a microscope since the early 2000s for more than 15 years? Do you understand? Do you think this is a life? Do you think you can, I don't know, go as you please? You have to be thinking constantly where you go, at what time you go, what to wear, what not to wear, what to get, what not to get. This is no living, ladies. And I'll go back to you later. I heard that all these networks, social networks, only want videos and audios for no longer than an hour and a half. And I'm getting there. So I'm going to stop now.